Joining us from Capitol Hill, Representative Russ Fulcher. He serves the state of Idaho, Republican from that state, also on the Energy and Commerce and Natural Resources Committee, and a Freedom Caucus member. Representative Fulcher, thanks for your time this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
The Energy and Commerce Committee is one of those key committees involved in the reconciliation process. Where are we on that process?
Well, we have our major hearing next week, or at least that's when it's scheduled to happen. And as you know, we've been tasked with identifying about $880 billion worth of reductions in overall spending. And so it's a big job for us, but there's a lot of things on the table, and I think we're working through that detail right now.
You were supposed to have a hearing, I think, this week. It got pushed off. Was there a reason why?
Yeah, I think that there's some discussions with the White House and trying to just make sure that the priorities are lined up. We know that we're going to need the president's support with whatever we do. And so Chairman Guthrie met with the president and just made sure that the priorities the committee was working on were lined up with what the president wanted to see. And I think that that caused for about a week delay in order to go back and do some more homework.
One of the things that has been reported when it comes to energy and commerce is taking a look at Medicaid, possible cuts there to achieve reconciliation. What's the number that we're looking at this point?
Well, we don't know for sure, but keep in mind that with Medicaid, it's not going to be reduced. We're going to continue to increase spending on Medicaid. What's going to happen is we're just going to reduce the rate of growth of the spending. And most people don't really understand that, but that's how that's going to happen. There's going to be at least 100 million or billion plus on EV and green mandates that get reduced, the subsidies. So that comes out of our budget. The spectrum sale comes out of our budget. There's some other things in there, but the Medicaid will be the biggest portion. However, that's not going to be all of the 880 by any means. And so I think there's going to be some focus on that. I would expect that there will be some adjustments, very possibly with things like work requirements for the able-bodied working age. But in terms of the benefit structure, the intent is to just reduce the rate of growth of Medicaid, not cut into the benefit component of the population that was originally intended for. I think we can do that.
You said reduce the rate of growth. If that's the case, do people get left out in the process if you reduce the growth rate?
You know, I don't think so. The intent is not to reduce the benefits themselves, but to just make it more fair. Get rid of some of the waste, abuse, and fraud, because there is some of that going on. Eligibility, we know there's a population that aren't eligible that are claiming it, so we're trying to identify that. I think possibly, and this is just me talking, I don't know for sure, it's too early, but very possibly the biggest portion of that number in terms of the reduction of the growth rate is likely to be the work requirement piece, because a lot of states have expanded their Medicaid coverage, and there are people on there, a lot of them that are working age, able-bodied, and so it's just fair for everybody if that population has some skin in the game. And so I think that's likely to be the biggest impact, and we know that's hundreds of billions right there. And so I think that's kind of the direction it's going to go, but it's still too early to tell. We're working on it now.
How do states fit into the picture as far as responsibilities they'll take if reductions are made or other aspects are changed in the reconciliation process?
Well, there's some of the interesting components there, because the state is a whole new twist, and they have, as you know, the ability to administer these things. And so what Congress is likely to do is to set some guidelines up, and if, for example, it's work requirements, there'll be some guidelines around that, but then the state will have the ability to administer that. And so how they do that will be up to them to a large extent, but they'll need to be within the guidelines of the federal direction, at least for the portion that comes through federal taxpayer money.
And one more question about timeline is concerned. Some say this should be the process of reconciliation done by Memorial Day. Some say by July the 4th. Where's your thinking on it?
I think it's likely to be Memorial Day. That's the 26th of May. And currently, it's my understanding, we're trying to get this all to the House floor for a House floor vote the week of the 19th. So I think that's where it's going to go, and I think we're going to be able to make that timeline. ENC, Energy Commerce, is going to be the biggest gating item probably on the committee front, and we're slated to make that happen.
You're the vice chair of the subcommittee on commerce, manufacturing, and trade. On that front, What's the impact that we've seen, or at least you've seen so far, in the president's approach to tariffs and trade?
Well, the biggest takeaway, and I know there's been a lot of controversy about this, but the biggest takeaway that I see is there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 trillion with a T of investment committed from foreign entities as a function of those tariffs. And it's across the board. It's automobile, it's tech, it's pharma, it's ag, it's medical. And so that's a big deal. We're not going to see the immediate payoff of that because it takes a while for that investment to take place. But that's the single biggest takeaway for me. There's a lot of discussions with other countries on where they're going to land on the tariff front. Personally, I think that's going reasonably well. I'm optimistic about that, with the possible exception of China. China is, there's so many adversarial components to the relationship between the U.S. and China. I'm a little bit less optimistic that a deal is going to be cut there, as some. I don't know, but the rest of the world seems to be coming together with the tariff agreements.
And as part of the committee do you get at least a tip or at least a heads up on when some of these deals might be announced?
Well, I'd like to think so, and if not, I just listen to your program.
But no announcement as far as specific deals. Will we see some this week, next week? Any sense of that?
Yeah, I don't. However, what I can say is when the president says that there are people coming from other countries in order to negotiate those things, I know that to be a fact because some of those same delegations talk to us in Congress. So that is definitely happening. And I believe that long term, it's going to be a good thing. It's going to take a while for this to shake out. Sometimes we get a little bit of a head up, sometimes we don't. But right now, I think things are progressing in the right direction.
What do you think about the recent announcement of the president that he made towards the tariffs on foreign-made films?
Well, it's just another one of those industries where, for the most part, there's been a trade imbalance. And I personally haven't followed that industry. The president obviously is taking a look at it. As the largest market in the world, we tend to put up with a little bit of discrimination against us because our market's so big. And that, over the course of time, has turned into be pretty lopsided, and where we have a trade deficit in so many industries. And so by leveling out that playing field, I think what the president's trying to do is make it so that American producers at least have a fighting chance to compete worldwide. And the film industry is just another one. Of course, there's a huge component of that in the U.S. It's reduced over the recent years. I think he's trying to even that out.
Before we let you go, you have legislation, or at least you're working on the House passed legislation when it comes to devices and informing the Smart Devices Act. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, with this new interconnected world, just about every appliance seems to be coming out either with a microphone or a camera, and sometimes you wouldn't know that. For example, your washing machine or your stove would be equipped potentially with cameras, with microphones, and the whole idea is to make life more convenient for voice commands, for reading QR codes, whatever it might be. But what we are trying to do is just make sure that's disclosed ahead of time to the consumer. Before you buy, if it's a piece of equipment that wouldn't naturally have, like your phone or your laptop or whatever, you wouldn't expect to have a microphone or camera. What we're asking for through this legislation is that the manufacturer disclose that ahead of time. And the reasons are obvious. It's for personal privacy. It could be, you could be exposed through hackers and not even know it. Personal data could be collected, you don't even know it. And so that's the whole emphasis behind that legislation. It's just strictly for transparency and upfront disclosure.
Representative Russ Fulcher of Idaho, a member of the Energy and Commerce and Natural Resources Committee. Sir, thanks for your time today.
Hey, thank you so much.